This video will show you 3 habits for transcending your level of consciousness. I'm going to share with you things that you can easily apply into your own life to make it so that you transform your level of consciousness and perceive from a higher point of view. Welcome back to another video. My name is Aaron and I help people expand their consciousness. Now in this video, we're going to be specifically talking about 3 habits that if you apply in your life can transform your level of consciousness. Now understand that the way that I'm speaking about levels of consciousness, we don't have to think of it like a hierarchy, like anybody is better than anybody else, because at the fundamental level, we're all immortal spiritual beings having temporary human experiences. We're all at a certain point in our journey. Now there's a certain purpose behind different levels of consciousness, certain lessons that we can learn, and the chart that I always like to use is the chart from the book called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins, and it shows the different levels of consciousness, so I'll just kind of briefly show it right here. But as you can see, towards the lower part of the levels of consciousness, you'll see emotions that may not feel good. You'll see emotions such as shame, fear, guilt. As you move up, you eventually get to anger, then you eventually get up to willingness, neutrality, and then eventually you'll see love, peace, joy, and enlightenment. Now on this scale that you see right here, each of these different levels of consciousness have different thought loops within it. And depending on which thought loops, depending upon which repetitive thinking we are within, that will determine what continues to perpetuate itself. Because we, on average, think so many thoughts a day. It's about 60, 70,000 thoughts a day. And of those, 90% are recycled from the day before. Which means that if we're in a shame, fear, guilt type mentality, we keep perpetuating the same things. We keep attracting to ourselves the same type of circumstances that reaffirm the same kind of beliefs and perspectives. So the key to understanding this transcending the layers of consciousness and levels of consciousness is that as we do so, as we let go of the bottom layers, we start to raise up our own vibration. Now understand that first off, your natural vibration is much higher than you think. It is more close to the natural state. I believe that enlightenment and peace and love is our natural state of being. But because we grow up in a certain way, we are conditioned to not think that. We're conditioned to believe that that's not who we are. And we're conditioned to believe into all of the, almost like that we are the ego. And therefore we start to separate from that higher level state of being and we start to go down. Now, as I've said in a prior video, I believe that one of the purposes of life is to awaken to this, is to awaken to the fact that we are an immortal spiritual being living a human experience. Now I say fact, this is my belief. I encourage you to go down your own journey. I encourage you to go within and to see what really resonates with you. I'm not trying to get you to believe this, but this is what I found from my own journey of going through spiritual awakening. And the idea behind this is that as we let go of the lower emotions, we then raise up our natural vibration and we start to awaken and transcend our own level of consciousness. Now, the first habit that we can develop is to know that we are an immortal spiritual being, living a temporary human experience, by observing our own thoughts. You see, when we think that we are the ego, we listen and we hear what we say and we're paying attention to what we're doing and we think that that's who we are. We think that we are certain characteristics of ourselves. We think I am this ethnicity, I am this height, I am this type of person. And we think that all of those things are things that make up who we are. And we even attain certain and give certain meanings as to what certain things of those mean. And because of that, we then develop kind of a skewed sample of what our ego really is. Now, the power and the most powerful thing I've ever done in my life is learn to meditate. And the trigger or the game changer for me was when I learned how to observe my thoughts rather than react to my thoughts. So what this means is I was sitting there, it was like the 3rd day of meditation of me learning it, and I was getting resistance because I was so much trying to control my mind. It was shortly after I also learned about the law of attraction, so it was kind of like I was, not wanting to think negative thoughts because I didn't want to attract it in my life, those things. So what happened is I developed resistance, but then game changer happened. I like that word, game changer. What happened is I was like, let the thoughts be there. I'm going to allow whatever I'm thinking to be there, even if I don't necessarily prefer it. And what I did is I did that, and within probably about 4 or 5 minutes of doing that, I started to feel so different. I started to see that there were always 2 perspectives. There's the perspective of the ego, of identification, of reaction. And then there's also a perspective of observation. There's a perspective of being able to not feel like things are happening to me. It was almost like I was able to watch things just flow into my mind and flow out rather than me trying to actually control everything. So this was the game changer for me. I believe that all of us have the ability to tap into this higher state of consciousness, which is the observation, because the moment you observe something is the and you allow it to be there. That's the key, is to observe it, to let it be there, and as long as you are aware of it, it then stops having a charge within you. If you don't want it to be there, it still has a charge, even if you're not thinking about it. And if you do want it to be there, it still may have a charge. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, maybe it's a positive thought, but don't become too attached to the positive thoughts. What I mean is the observation is where all the juice is. That's where all the power is. And when you learn how to observe, you transcend all the lower emotions. Think about it. You have thoughts of shame, fear, or guilt. And instead of trying to control them and saying they're not supposed to be there, that charges them, that keeps them there. Instead of doing that, you let them be there. You observe them. You feel the emotion. And as you do that, it starts to disintegrate. It's a paradox. It starts to go away because you're not feeding it anymore. You're not giving it power and momentum. Think of it like a child, like maybe a 2-year-old. Now, a 2-year-old might come up to you and might start throwing a temper tantrum if you don't give it ice cream. If you argue with that child, the child will continue to argue back with you. If you, though, observe the child, you know the child's going to be okay, you go into the kitchen, you do something else, you then will see that the child will eventually get tired and maybe take a nap. It doesn't have something to feed into, to argue with. So that's the idea here, is in a way, think of that like you're not feeding those lower emotions by charging them, by not wanting them to be there. You're learning to observe them. And if you do this, I promise you that this can be one of the most powerful things you ever do in your life, because you stop identifying with the ego that you think is you. You are much further beyond that. You are much further expanded. And when you tap into this realm of consciousness, into this feeling, into this state of awareness, everything will begin to change for you. You will feel different. You will start to experience new things in your life because you're coming at it from a higher vibrational point of view. And that's when you'll really start to transcend your levels of consciousness. Now, the second habit that you can begin to develop has to do with forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is one of the ones that will really transform a lot of people's life as well. It did for me especially because I had a rough childhood because I had an abusive stepmom, and I know I say this a lot, but I just want you guys to know that a lot of people that have been through pain are able to transcend their levels of consciousness because that gives them the pressure to do so. Anytime I make videos like this, there'll always be 1 or 2 people in the comments. It's like, oh, I had this great childhood and I've always had everything handed to me. It wasn't really the case at all. And I definitely don't identify as much with the way things happened back when I was a teenager and, going through those experiences. However, I came out of it. All of a sudden I had all this freedom when I was 15 years old, and my dad divorced her, my ex-stepmom, and then all of a sudden there was an underlying sense of guilt or resentment towards that person because I was like, why did this happen? But when I started to eventually have my spiritual awakening, I realized that that was necessary to get me to a place to go within. And that was something that allowed me to transcend my consciousness because of that pain. But I had to learn how to forgive. And in order to learn how to forgive, you have to understand this one idea, and this idea right here can change your life. Everyone will always make decisions based on their own level of rationalization. Now, what this means is that people always have their own reasons for doing things. And we must be somewhat empathetic to that. So think about it. Somebody comes over to you, it's a friend of yours that knows you, that you know, and you feel connected to. This person steals from you, steals something or is lying to you, tells you a white lie or steals from you. You get mad, you get angry. You ask, why did this happen? And you realize that then you can eventually shift your perspective and see that maybe if you start to put yourself in that person's shoes, that person has a family that they're struggling to support, and that they stole because that was what they thought they had to do in order to support their family. They had an ulterior motive that maybe you weren't aware of. You thought you were taking it personal. And because of that, that is one of the reasons it happened. Now, I'm not saying that it's okay that that happened. I'm not saying that you need to continue to let this person do that thing to you. I'm saying have discernment, but don't judge yourself and don't judge that other person in the way that if you remain grudged towards that person, you are the one that's suffering, because on that scale of consciousness, you have to remain in that state of consciousness in order to blame someone else. If you feel anger and you think it's being directed towards that person, you're still holding on to that anger. So the moment you forgive is the moment you let go of all those lower emotions. Think of forgiveness also as neutrality, because when you forgive, you are letting go and you are neutralizing the meaning of all of those things that happened, of all of the circumstance, because you're starting to see it from their point of view. They're just doing what they thought they had to do. And I know it's kind of hard to hear, but even the ex-stepmom that I had that was abusive, I realized that she was probably abused when she was a kid. And she probably believed and had so much desire to control everything in life that made her control other people, and that made her manipulate other people. That's just how she is. And I'm just only saying that because I can observe it, and that's what's happening in life now, even now. And I don't have to ever see her again, but I see the way she treats my half-sisters, and it's the same thing. But I can be aware of it, and at the same time I forgive everything that's happened, and because of that I don't carry around any resentment, and I don't carry around any of those negative emotions. Now, the third habit that you can have has to do with becoming present to the moment and bringing the awareness out of the head and into the body. Now, intellectual ideas are great. I share them a lot on this channel. However, there's something even better than intellectual ideas. That is being present to the moment, and that is bringing the energy from out of the head and into the body, into the heart spaces specifically. Now, by doing this, you start to become more present to the moment. Think about it. Anytime we identify with the future, we take ourselves out of the present moment. Of course, we're doing it in the present moment because the only moment that exists is now. And think about this, if 2 weeks from now, when 2 weeks from now comes, it's actually this moment right now. The past never really happened in the past, it happened now, but from our perspective of us and our memory, our linear time-space memory that we have, we can see it stretched out, but really the only moment that exists is now. So knowing that, the key then becomes, how can I be happy in the present moment? How can I be grateful for my life now? Because now is all I ever have. And when you begin to be also aware of this, then you can decide that a powerful way to become present to the moment is to allow your awareness to go out of your head and into your body. And the way you could do this is right now. You can put your hands in front of you like this. And what you can do is bring the awareness and start to feel from your hands. If you do that like this, and you start to put the awareness there, the attention there, you start to feel it. What you can also do is put it in your heart like this. And as you do that, you will feel that your thinking slows down. This is the secret to really being able to not observe, this is the secret to not being trapped into thinking thought loops over and over again. If you want to decrease your thinking, all you have to do is bring the awareness from in your head, bring it present into the body. This is why sometimes going to the gym can be a good thing, running, taking a bath, going to nature, walking barefoot on the ground, anything that brings the sensation from in the head and more into the body. We are starting to become present to the moment, and we will transform our level of consciousness by doing that every single time we do it. Now remember that the more you do this, the easier it gets. The more you do it, the more you pattern yourself for this kind of feeling, understanding, and level of consciousness, and the more dynamic you develop this momentum to where this becomes a part of who you are. Now, if you want to learn how to transcend your level of consciousness and to raise your vibration, I've created a free MP3 meditation that you can listen to in the description box. And it can completely allow you to let go of lower emotions. It can allow you to start to focus on higher level perspectives. And it can allow you to raise your vibration. Now, I recommend that you listen to this every day for 21 days. I've recently released it, and I've been having people tell me that they absolutely love it. So I thought this is something I want to share with you guys in this video, especially because it's so relevant to do with, transcending levels of consciousness. So it'll be in the description box for you guys, absolutely free. And other than that, as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you guys haven't already. Hit that little notification gear in case you guys want to see the daily videos that I do. The way YouTube does things now is you actually have to hit that button to see the daily vids. And other than that, as always, I will see you guys on the next vid. Peace, much love, and namaste.